Welcome to the Cherland podcast, where I, Connor Cherland, meet up with a musician, hear about what makes them tick, what kind of experiences they're bringing into their music, and see if they'll play us a song. On today's episode, we have Jamie Drake. I initially met her about 5 years ago. We played at a paella party where there's this giant pan of paella being made while musicians are singing original songs. Jamie and I, in this podcast, we talk about her album Everything's Fine, talking to your inner child, and we also talk about a lot of the collaborations that she does and why they go so well. So please enjoy. Cool. Well, I always like to start off with a fun fact, and I had no idea that you had hyperacusis. That was a crazy fun fact. How So it's when certain considered normal sounds sound way too loud and painful. And how frequently do you deal with that?
Well, it kind of came, I think it was 2017. I called it my Portland tour. And I was I just wanted to discover the city. So I made it an excuse to play a bunch of shows in Portland and also discover the city. And I thought it seemed kind of a fun idea to get to know the community better instead of just blowing through that city, how you do on tour. It's one city at a time. Plus, I know that's what touring normally is, but it feels kind of disruptive to my soul in some ways.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, to answer your question, it's weird. I woke up one morning and I felt like my ears, I had this experience of my ears just opening up more than they should. It was really weird. It just felt like I could hear things I shouldn't be able to hear. It was like a hypersensitivity, basically. And it was super painful. And I remember trying to put some dishes away, and it hurt so bad that I had to wear my noise canceling headphones.
Yeah.
I don't, it's been interesting because for me, it's been this thing that it's not something that I experience all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it happened then, because it's not I'm a folk musician. It's not like I'm,
yeah,
listening to music too loud or something, and I blew out my eardrums. Is really strange. I think it probably has more to do with being more of a sensitive person in general.
Yeah.
And I think maybe at that time in my life too, my body was just retuning itself in some ways. And maybe asking me to make some changes somehow. I don't know. The apartment building I've lived in for the last 8 years in Silver Lake. For the last 4 years of being in that building, it changed owners a couple times, and they tried to get everyone to move out of the building and tried to pay everyone off, and half the building left, and then the rest of us we're not leaving because it's so expensive to move somewhere else, and we had rent control. And so we stayed. But there was construction going on in the building day and night, 7 in the morning to 7 at night for about 9 months.
Brutal.
And it might have been because of that. I don't know. I don't remember if I had my noise canceling headphones yet. I probably got them during that time. And then, of course, after they were finally done, they started construction right outside the building on the road.
Right.
And that took another 1.5 years. I was oh my God. So I feel like I've had these sort of obvious signs of maybe city life isn't really where we want to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that construction sounds brutal.
Yeah, I feel as I've been in nature in the last year, I haven't really noticed that very much. Maybe my body has healed itself, or maybe I'm still really sensitive and I just don't do well in loud environments.
Sure.
It's kind of funny too, because when I mentioned it to my family, one of my sisters was duh, I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you've always had sensitive ears. I'm like, really?
Really?
I guess it's true, because like, I remember I have 3 little sisters that are like 10 to 15 years younger than me. And when we were growing up, I was like the teenager who was like the second mom, basically. And everyone in my family is loud, except for me. So in that sense, I feel like I've always been trying to get away from like the noise in a way.
What a strange career to have stumbled into in that case.
Yeah, I know. I prefer, in some ways I prefer playing solo shows because I don't really have to deal with like a full band and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. When like we have construction in our building for like it's been like 2 months, and there was like jackhammering, and now there's like loud welding and loud equipment to make welding possible. And when I'm fully unable to work when there's that going on, did you find a place? I mean, for 9 months and then a year and a half, you were going through it. So like, could you write a song during that noise, or did you just stay up late and do work later?
I honestly don't remember what I did. I mean, I definitely survived. It was a period of time where I was very busy and I was, doing a lot of things. I think that I was just, I don't know, the last decade, I feel like just in general, I've just really hustled a lot all the time. And I didn't really take my real needs into account, like self-care type needs and things like that. So I can't even remember. I know that it was frustrating, but it's been a few years now, so
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting older too, and I'm like, I've blocked out that part of my life. I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, no worries. Well, speaking of your hustle, listening, I mean, I've already listened through your Everything's Fine album multiple times prior to like trying to interview you, but it was really great to revisit. And one of the themes that I wanted to talk a bit about is losing faith and finding it again, and like that's like with Blue and Oh Well and Wonder. It seems like a real theme in the album of like this reinvention and like a rediscovery of yourself and the universe. And so I kind of want to dive into there, and specifically with faith, as someone who like grew up in a Pentecostal church, and then like which is what the internet says, so feel free to correct me if anything is wrong. What do you feel?
I thought you were saying that you grew up in a Pentecostal church. I was like, really?
Is the internet wrong? Did you grow up?
No, it's not. Church? It's not wrong.
Okay, great.
Partly, yeah. Like my grandparents were Pentecostal, and I would say when I was young, we would go to like Assemblies of God type churches and stuff.
Okay. We
were like, speaking in tongues was like, if you don't speak in tongues, you're not really saved or something.
Yeah. Stuff.
And then, but mostly I would say like middle school through high school, I went to like a non-denominational charismatic type church.
Okay. So in these songs and kind of in the span of your 30s, what a giant question, I guess. What do you feel like has been lost faith-wise, and what do you feel like has been gained faith-wise? What has that journey been looking like?
It's funny because I feel like that idea is always evolving for me.
Yeah.
Depending on what day you talk to me.
Sure.
The answer to that question will be different. What did faith look like then, and what does it look like now?
It seems like certain songs talking about you losing an idea of faith, and then in other areas picking it back up again and saying like, I'm not going to be kind of this way, I'm going to be this way. And I'm more so curious of like what it is that you set down and what is it that you actually picked up.
Right. Well, when I initially lost my faith in a big way, I think it was around 2012 or something like that. It really did feel like something I lost because I wasn't trying to lose it. I feel like a lot of people maybe will lose their faith, but they're still able to keep some sort of semblance of like, I still believe this or whatever. But like for me, it was just sort of like it disappeared. It felt like a language that I couldn't speak anymore, and it just like disappeared overnight, kind of a thing. So there was a lot of mourning that I experienced during that time because it felt like I had lost almost like a parental relationship. But then it took about 3 or 4 years for me to sort of go through this cycle of like I literally felt like I was walking around in the dark in a weird way. And so then, you know, about 3 or 4 years later, I was talking to a friend on the phone and I was like, can I just decide to believe again?
What was her answer?
Well, they were just like, yeah, I think that, yeah, you can decide to believe again. Like, I can't remember exactly what they said. And I was like, okay, fine. I believe again. I believe again because I think for me, it was just like, okay, if Jesus is a placebo pill that I need to take in order to experience joy, a sense of purpose, peace, you know, this idea of like, you know, a being that's big and like a fatherly being or something that's sort of like loving and guiding my path in some way. Like if Jesus is a placebo pill that I need to take in order to experience these things that I have experienced in my life through that faith, then I'm just going to take the pill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like,
Sure.
and it's literally like, okay. So I think during those years, I lost a lot of things that should be lost anyway. You know, things that I think a lot of people that grow up in the church have a lot of fear of the world. You know, you know, you're taught to, you know, to fear people that don't know God or whatever. You know, different things that are, you know, just sort of like, well, that's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, most of my friends don't have faith in God, you know, because at the same time, I've never really felt like I belonged in organized religion. Like, I didn't really trust that. Sure. Even from when I was a young kid. Like, I always felt like there was this loving presence that was, like, with me. But I never enjoyed, like, I didn't like church. Yeah. And, you know, like, the building and, like, even the people, a lot of them are bastards. I mean, a lot of them are, I don't know, like, in the church that I grew up in, it was so patriarchal and so demeaning to women. I guess that's kind of the same thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And also, a lot of people that grew up in the, you know, the generation that I grew up in and the one prior, like in the 80s and 90s, there was just this intense thing called purity culture, which was something I didn't even know was like a term until like 2 years ago. Yeah. When I read a book about it and I was like, are you kidding? I'm not alone, like, in having experienced this insane shame around my sexual identity and like what choices I make. And and oh my God, it totally affected the choices I made as an adult.
What was the book?
The first one I read is called You Are Your Own by Jamie Lee Finch.
Okay.
And then I read another one that's a little bit more of a research-based book called Pure. Okay. I forget the name of the author. But it completely undid just a couple of years ago for me. It completely undid, like, this whole thing for me where it's like, I mean, basically, it's like religious trauma, basically. Right. And I honestly think that if you grow up in the church like I did, there's probably no way you don't have some kind of religious trauma.
Yeah.
People have made horrible life decisions because they've been made to fear like they're like having sex before marriage, something like that, you know, like
kind of a normal thing.
Yeah,
that a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's a part of being human. You know what I mean? Like, But putting so much focus and fear around something like that,
Right.
just, it scares you to have that desire. And then it scares you when you're actually allowed to do it. It's like, you need to be this like pure white as snow, whatever, no masturbation, like this is like, it's
Yeah.
insanity. Like, don't be human, basically. And then once you get married, though, oh yeah, you can have dirty sex with your husband then. It's like as if, like, you've been conditioned to believe that part of your body is evil and sinful and
Right.
worthy of being sent to hell. It's like, oh my God, it's so horrible. It's horrible. And it's happened to millions of people. And it's this culture, it's this thing that it's like, I think people that are around my age, like maybe in their 30s and 40s, who are finally realizing, like, I have this trauma around this thing that happened to me when I was a kid and a teenager, and now they're coming out with it, and they're writing books and music and like podcasts, and so it's this whole thing now where it feels like, wow, I'm reading a couple of books right now that are really great. They're both no bark. They're both like biographies or whatever, these like two different women. So yeah.
Did those books, did they offer any way out of that? Because I mean, there's like the trauma portion, like incurring trauma, and then there's like reintegrating yourself back into yourself. Like, did it offer any steps or like helpful tools or like resources? Did it like point you in a helpful direction?
I mean, I think their main thing was just sort of exposing it as something that's real, so that people can discover it and come forward and begin to heal from it. Because I think there's just so much gaslighting that's been endured. So just to even know that you're not alone, and that there's like so many people that have gone through similar things in their life. I think that religious trauma around that, like having adequate counselors and things like that, I think that there will be a lot more people popping up that will be able to help with that specifically because of this whole movement, I guess. But it's not as common right now because, I think some therapists might just be like, well, it's not true, so stop feeling that way. You know what I mean? It's like, but I was brainwashed. Don't you get it? Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's really interesting. I feel like, so, I don't know. So it's like I decided to believe again, but it's like the only thing I really wanted to take with me was this, like, Jesus being a placebo pill that I can take. I mean, there's even scripture that says, like, if you have faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain, right? I'm like, well, this is my mustard seed.
Sure.
So it's been cool to, and from there, I've like slowly been kind of inching forward over the years into that, but I don't know if I'll ever figure out what's really going on. You know what I mean?
Do you think you can?
No.
I mean, it seems like this is one of the most important questions and one of the hardest questions that people can like deal with. But I really appreciate art that can house some of that questioning, because these are really important human questions, and to have really cool songs on an album that deal with this sort of thing. And you've talked about sort of this worldview change, as switching from black and white to shades of gray, and I think your album does that really well without really like sticking a flag anywhere, just being able to hold the question well. And I think that's a great service that it's able to do for, I mean, myself included. It's a great service to me. So I'm sure the songs have a good effect on you.
Is the faith question something that you think about as well, or?
Yeah, I care very much about how the universe is structured, and if there are entities or entity controlling it or manipulating it, manipulating me, or a nicer way to say manipulating is like loving, or,
or
like
providing opportunities, maybe, I don't know.
yeah, and I do fall on the side of believing that someone is creating opportunities for me and manipulating things in my favor. Yeah, but that is quite different from the way that I was raised to believe. And like you were talking about purity culture affecting people in their 30s and 40s, and I'm like, well, it's also affecting people in their like today, like still today. Yeah, so it's something that a lot of people I think need to be writing about and working through in their art, because there's a lot of work to be done. When you started music at 29, you're a part of you're making a big life transition, and you got a residency at a place called Cranes. One, getting residency anywhere to play like once a week sounds so cool, and like a place to really build out your chops. Can you tell me a story of like how that happened? What do you think? Like, what were some of the challenges?
Yeah, I think that was like one of the first places that I learned about when my ex and I, we had actually lived in Thousand Oaks for a while, and we finally moved to Los Angeles. And so Crane's Tavern, I don't remember how I heard about it, but obviously at the time also the Hotel Cafe was like, I have to play there, like the Hotel Cafe tour was happening, and I went to see it at the El Rey, and like, but Crane's Tavern, I don't know, it was just a hole in the wall that had really stiff drinks, and it was free, and I made friends with the promoter, and he said I could do a weekly thing. And actually that's where, if you know Lissy, she got her start there.
Oh yeah.
She used to, and she did a weekly residency there, I think I don't remember if it was the same thing as Beachwood Rockers, but she was definitely a part of that crew. And just when I was coming in, she was kind of exiting LA. I think that's when she went to Ojai or out west or out Midwest or whatever. I'm not totally sure, but I was just like, I just wanted to play as much music as I possibly could, because the decade before that, I just felt like I was in a desert the whole time, and sort of being prevented from being myself in the world and playing my music. And so, it was, I didn't care if there was anyone there. There were Wednesday nights where there were like 3 people listening to me, or just like walking through to get to the back yard where they could smoke. You know what I mean? And I honestly, I didn't care. It was such a pure time for me to like try out new songs. It was probably like, in terms of me not caring what anyone thinks, it was like a really pure time musically for me. I would sometimes I would just like, I would write a new song and I'd be like, I'm gonna try this out tonight. I don't know if anyone's gonna be there, but I don't care. And I would just like, I'd have the lyrics on stage with me, and I'd try out that new song and maybe mess up and be like, I'm gonna start that one over, and just like, it didn't even matter. But while I was there, it was encouraging just to see, like, I had free reign to kind of do whatever I wanted in my set. And then I was like, I was really excited to like meet other musicians, other people like me, and just like so hungry to make those relationships in a real way, not in like, oh, you're such an opportunist trying to like blah. I was just like, I just want to make friends with other people that played music, And it was really cool, because I was able to invite different friends that I met to like open for me, or like I would be sandwiched in between like an opener and a closer. And it was cool because we could all, bring our friends out to that night or whatever. And I did that for a year, and in that year I think I met most of the people I know that are musicians in LA, because it was just like, I was literally out every night too,
Yeah.
like going to see music. And I remember going to the hotel cafe and hanging out and making friends and watching new people play and everything. And yeah, it's funny because I think in some ways, developmentally, I was almost like experiencing getting to be in my early 20s because I didn't really get to experience that.
Right.
So I think that part of myself had sort of been frozen in time. And so for, those couple of years, those couple of first years when I was doing it, was like, it just felt like I was a kid again in some ways. And it was really cool.
That's really exciting. Do you still like hang out or play with any of those people still?
I mean, I see a lot of those people around town all the time. Whenever I'm in town, a lot of people, I'll like run into them at gigs and I'll be like, who was that person? They played drums and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. I think at first everything was so like overwhelming and just like, I was very idealistic as well. Like I thought all of these people were like my real friends. And then I realized a few years later, like, oh, the guys, a lot of them, they just want to have sex with me. And then later you kind of like notice like, is that girl being competitive? I can't tell. I'm just like, I've just always just wanted to be friends with people. It's just like, I don't know. It's weird to me when people are competitive or, it's weird to me when people are like that. And I get it. It comes from a place of insecurity.
Right.
And a place of scarcity, like actually believing that I could take something that belongs to them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense because everybody is totally their own thing,
Yeah.
So, and this is just the truth. This is not me being idealistic at all. This is me just like speaking some fucking truth right now. It's like, no one is you. No one is me. No one is anyone else. So why are people all hung up on like trying to protect what's theirs and not share it? And I get a little bit of this like, oh, don't just like give everybody everything that you have. Like that's just, you got to have discernment and wisdom. But like people just guarding their territories and stuff like that. Like, I guess the natural progression of at some point was that I realized I became a little disenchanted at some point because I had been pretty idealistic when I started off. I was like, oh, all these people are my new awesome friends. And it was almost like I went away to college and then I realized like, oh, not everyone likes me.
How'd you end up finding like more of your, because it seems like you have some real ones in your life, like AJ and like people like Justine, like people who have like spent more time by your side for longer. How did you meet them? What do you think the difference is?
Well, with AJ, I was playing some random restaurant gig and he like came up to me in between my sets or something. I could tell he was kind of shy, but I was talking to a friend and then he left, but then he came back and he was just like, I was really impressed with just how he was just like, I'd love to play guitar for you. Like, I really like your music and I'd love to play guitar for you. Like, however that could happen. Like, I took him up on that. But also 2 weeks before that, I had put out into the universe, like, that I wanted to have like a band of my own. I wanted to have like a partner that I could work with. And so it's almost like energetically we were in a similar place, I guess. And so it's interesting how that kind of stuff works, I think. And then he just also ended up being like one of the best people I know. Super honest, the most hardworking person I've ever met, self-taught. And we learned so much together by working together. I think my talent kind of inspired him, and then his work ethic and ability to like do anything was like, whoa. And then we just kind of kept rolling with that, made 2 records together. And then with Justine, I think we met maybe at Room 5 when that was a thing. And I remembered her mentioning something about the Santa Monica Pier, like she was going and playing like cover songs out there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I want to make some money playing music. I'll come with you. So I did the whole like got a license and bought one of those battery powered amps. I went out there and we went out there together and claimed our little areas. Yeah. And she did really well because when she lived in San Francisco before that, I think she bartended at this place outside of it on the pier or something. Like she would play cover songs all the time. So she had this whole like rolling Rolodex of cover songs that she knew already and enjoyed doing that. I didn't because like I was just like, I want to play my songs. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I went out there and I was like, it just felt so demoralizing to me because at heart, like I really am a songwriter. I can entertain people, definitely, like if I want to, but I have to do a little more work with that. And in terms of like learning covers and just like doing kind of crowd pleasing things, that's not really my gift, I don't think. And not that I don't like learning covers. I'm kind of learning some right now, and it's been sort of fun to put my own spin on things, but our friendship kind of happened by chance in a way because she was dating somebody who saw us singing together once, and he was like, you guys should be a duo and blah blah blah, and it ended up being this guy who used to be the president of Capitol Records and like was Fiona Apple's manager, and you know, she and I looked like sisters and our voices were similar, so he tried to make us this duo, like this folk duo. And so at first I think there were some contentions between us because her like boyfriend at the time was kind of a not good person. It's kind of like snaky. But anyway, that friendship has lasted. It's one of my longest lasting friendships here, and we're definitely like musical sisters for sure. We've got some similar vibes.
Yeah, that's how I first met you, was playing. You were playing with Justine. It was at that paella party.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was so long ago.
And it was all leather jackets with tassels.
Was it?
Like matching brown leather jackets with tassels under the arms.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like,
I must have been borrowing one of her jackets or something.
She just owns multiple.
Yeah, she's got some stuff like that. I don't. That's cool. I forgot. That's like where we met.
Yeah, but that was like 5 years ago at this point. So
yeah.
That was forever ago. I'm always curious about how people meet real friends when it comes to musicians, because it is tricky figuring out who is going to be competitive with you and who's going to collaborate with you. And you talk about AJ Minette treating you like an equal and respecting you. I imagine people think that most musicians collaborate well. And I think that that's not true. Like, I think... But it seems like you do, because you collaborate with a lot of people, and people want to collaborate with you. So
maybe it's me. Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. When people want to collaborate with the same person, it means that you have a certain trait that makes it easier to collaborate with. What do you think that is? This is a chance for you to compliment yourself, by the way.
I mean, I feel like I do have an ability to see like someone else's where they shine. I'm able to help them shine brighter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like if I'm singing backgrounds for somebody, I'm not going to sing over them because I have like an ego or whatever. There's an art to singing backgrounds, mm-hmm. or singing, on a track. Like if I'm doing a duo or something like that, I want what's best for the song. And in like a songwriting session too, I think sometimes I can tell what the other person's strengths are as well, and where I might be able to like fill in the holes, but every songwriting session's really different.
Do you notice any commonalities between the people that you tend to collaborate with? Like, do they all happen to be Pisces, or do they like? What do you notice?
Well, Justine is a Libra, and so am I.
There you go.
AJ is Gemini, and that's an air sign.
There you go.
And my friend Justin, that I write with a lot, he is an Aquarius. So maybe,
Not
I don't know. Another air sign, yeah.
Oh, that is. There you go.
I know. It's like, maybe that's it. I don't know.
That's not bad. You should just ask people for their birthdays in that case.
Yeah, it's like, are you an air sign?
Yeah, and then be like, cool. Then you're in. And if not, then you're out. It's that easy.
Yeah.
With collaborations, you put out the Everything's Fine record with Anti-Fragile, which is finally a great name for a record label. What was that experience like for you?
It was my first record deal ever.
Mm-hmm.
So all in all, it was a really exciting experience for me to have a record label want to work with me and put out my record and put a lot of money behind it. I was like, this is cool. I felt very supported and believed in by that label. And I'm putting out the B-Sides EP through them as well. Yeah, Tom's totally believes in me and has been a big supporter. As far as, their reach or their, like, cool factor, I can't say, like, they're, like, the coolest or like, they have, like, the best distribution. I have no idea. The whole experience was, like, super positive. It was exciting.
Yeah, someone who knows nothing about getting a record deal, tell me do you get a phone call one day from John Anti-Fragile, and he's just like, hey, listen, I got a deal for you?
I don't remember how that one came about. I think he might have emailed my manager at the time. Just talked about stuff, I can't remember. I think there was like a couple of other labels sort of interested at the same time, but Anti-Fragile was the one that really followed through on everything that they said, and like one of the other labels was like, they just kind of dropped the ball, and it was like, okay. I guess we have our answer as to what we're gonna do here. Also, their deal isn't like a traditional, like, they don't own my masters. Cool. It's more of a royalty based thing, which I think a lot more labels are kind of doing these days. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been cool.
Well, we've talked about the album plenty. Are you interested in playing any songs from the album?
Oh, let's see. That's so funny. I haven't, like... I'll play Oh Well, Oh Well.
Cool. Is this the improvisational dance?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're very good at improvisational dance.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Thank you. I've been wanting to do an improvisational dance music video like my whole life, I think. So...
Did you study dance ever, or did you like take dance classes?
No, I've just always really liked dancing. I just never do it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't dance very often. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Shadows just a creeping by in my mind's eye, wondering how I ever felt so pure, ever felt I'd ever need another door. Phantom of the daylight used to bring me light, wondering how I never felt this insecure. Never felt I'd ever need another door. Daylight's way Sunsets taking me today. Oh well, oh well, oh well, oh well, oh well, oh well, I'm gonna be okay. Simple savior waving by in my mind's eye, wishing for that sweet design, everlasting and evermore. Everything you'd ever want behind the door, but it's a phantom of the daylight. Used to bring me life, wondering how I never felt this insecure. Never felt I'd ever need another door. Daylight's wasting away. Sunsets taking me today. Cross my heart in hope and pray. Sunsets demanding me to stay. Oh well, 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 I'm gonna be okay. Cross my heart and hope and pray. Oh well, 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 I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Thanks.
So good. Your falsetto is so incredible. That's,
Oh, thank you.
I think, one of the things that is showing off a lot on the album is your ability to really do some falsetto tricks.
Cool. Like what?
Some of the songs have this like Disney princess vibe to it. Like you mentioned Snow White earlier. Like, was that an inspiration? Is that something that you go for a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I remember actually when I was making intentions about where I wanted to head, like as a sound and everything, the 2 weeks before I met AJ,
Yeah.
when I was like putting out into the universe, like, I want to do this and I need a collaborator. The Disney thing was a part of that. I think partly, not so much because of the princess aspect, but because Disney, like old Disney music, like Dumbo, like some of the best beautiful, Baby Mine, just like this beautiful song, but also there's always like so much like lush orchestration involved.
Yes.
Whereas like nowadays, I don't feel like they put as much effort into composing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different vibe. There's a Jam in the Van video of you playing in like a red cape that reminds me of like a Little Red Riding Hood cape. Do you still own that cape?
Oh no, I think I was borrowing it from like a boy I was seeing at the time. Yeah, it
It's so
belonged
cool.
to a boy. Yeah, it is cool. Maybe I do have it still.
It fit in very well with this like Disney princess theme where I was like, that I think that's literally what Belle wears like as she approaches the Beast's
That's really
castle.
funny. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. That was unintentional.
You were also playing Wonder, which is your most like the like that feels a bit like the most Disney princess while wearing the cape. I was like, good for her. Just full
Oh.
full
Full
on.
on.
Oh my gosh.
Well, one, I want to buy the cape, and then two, I might have to send you a duplicate. 'Cause capes are dope. People need to start bringing back capes. There's also this thing, kind of the last piece of the album that I wanted to go into is this like child likeness, like seeing your child self and talking to it, like with songs like Allison and songs like Make a Spark, where you're talking about being afraid to be seen, and Allison, where it's about like finding your voice. And I'm kind of just looking for an update on being afraid to be seen, and then like choosing a career in music and like spending your 30s really like hustling after a musical career. Are you still afraid to be seen? Is that something that you still struggle with? Do you feel like you've found your voice? Lots of questions. Feel free to pick one.
I mean, when I wrote Make a Spark, that was actually the first song that I wrote for this record. And that was in 2015. And I was in a musical in New York City, which was like huge bucket list thing for me because I did musical theater when I was younger. But yeah, I was really afraid to just step out and as a solo artist, as like who I was. And obviously still had some things to figure out with that. But it's funny because I did write Allison for, it was actually AJ's niece at the time, and her name's Allie. She inspired that song, but I have realized later that it is a lot of it really is about me, you know, because she reminded me of myself, I guess, too. It's interesting that you asked this question, I guess, because in the last year, I think the pandemic has obviously forced everyone to stay at home and to rest, and a lot of people haven't been able to continue their work at home, myself included. I kind of took the opportunity this past year to just like rest from years of hustling so hard. So like physically rest, I'd been struggling with insomnia, and then, you know, like I had like really sensitive ears. I feel like my whole nervous system really needed to rest. And then I ended up transitioning into finding this program that you do inner child work in that program. For the last like 6 months or so, almost a year now, I have actually been doing a lot of inner child work, and what's involved with that is like certain characteristics that you live out that are just, it's hard to explain. I guess this whole last year I've just been healing a lot from a lot of different things in the past few years, actually. And I think the overarching thing that I've learned is that, well, I guess one of the messages I received when I was younger, because I actually felt pretty neglected. My parents got divorced when I was really young, and then I didn't really have a relationship with my dad. And then my mom got remarried really quickly and then had 3 babies. So I felt neglected and isolated and alone. And it wasn't until I discovered the musical theater, like in high school, when it sort of felt like, oh, you guys are noticing me again, you know?
Wow.
So I think I had taken on this message of attention equals love then. I felt a lot of pressure to go become something extraordinary, because otherwise I just didn't deserve to be loved in the world. And that's not something I would have been able to actually consciously say out loud and say, yes, I agree with this, because I never would have said that. Right. But through all of the healing, like the work that I've been doing on myself this last year, I can honestly say like, wow, I did believe that. And it led me into a performance type of career. And what do I do with that now? Because I've been healing from that in a really big way. And how much of that do I want to continue to do?
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that anymore. I believe that I'm totally loved and accepted as I am, and I don't need any attention. Actually, I am curious how much attention I really want. Like, my true self is like, maybe we don't want all this attention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe we just want to like love ourselves and have that be enough. And I think it's hard if you've been operating under that kind of belief system. It's like you have to take baby steps back into exposing yourself to those things, because there's a big possibility of sort of getting triggered, you know?
Yeah.
Like playing a big show and feeling like this rush of like all these people's energy. I think it'll be overwhelming anyway.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been doing that in a long time.
Right.
But the added aspect of all the stuff that I've sort of been undoing in my life, there could be the propensity of maybe being triggered in a way that would. But it's okay. It's like getting triggered with things. It's like I know how to take care of myself. Like I know how to tell myself the things that are true now. Whereas before, I think maybe, I think attention now will just have to equal something else. It'll just have to equal like, I'm doing a good job, and it's okay if people want to listen to me play music live and clap for me, because
Sure.
I do well at that, I guess, but it's more of an internal synthesis than anything, I think. But it'll be interesting to see how it shifts the way I do my work.
It seems possible that the internal work might make you even better as a performer, as you don't need praise. So it's possible that it could go back to that like easiness of like the Cranes residency of like, I just wrote this song tonight. I don't care if they hate it or not. I'm gonna
Yeah.
like going back to the root of it and not needing their approval. People think that attention's great, but like bad people get attention too,
Yeah.
So
And bad people pay attention to you.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
because someone is paying attention to you doesn't mean they're good for you.
yeah, speaking of guys who just want to sleep with you.
Yeah, exactly. Hello.
Yeah, those are terrifying.
Yeah.
Practically, what are you being instructed? Is this like a licensed therapist telling you these things, or?
No, it's a 12-step program called
Ooh.
ACA. It's Adult Children of Alcoholics in Dysfunctional Families.
Wow.
And I wish I had discovered it 20 years ago, because that's how much my life has changed, even, since July. And I never related to the 12 steps. I tried to go to Al-Anon a long time ago, but I mostly got annoyed by people. Like, I ended up getting a little bit triggered because a lot of people who go to Al-Anon are like still in relationships with alcoholics, and they're like
Sure.
not doing well.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It just wasn't the program for me.
Right.
And I didn't even know ACA existed. And it kind of is frustrating, but it's okay.
I'm frustrated at whoever's marketing this.
I know. Well, it's like one of those things where it's like the program is, they don't promote themselves. It's more of like, if you become attracted to it somehow. I learned about it through like a roommate or something. I was like, what?
I'm sure they don't have a ton of money for marketing.
Well, I mean, they're related to all of the other 12-step programs. But
Yeah.
for some reason, I'd never heard of them.
And they promote this child work? This is like one of the steps?
So basically, saying that you're an adult child is basically saying that as an adult, I have reactions that I learned to have as a child. It's like that inner child that's like, sometimes you'll see an adult and the way that they react to a situation is like, oh my God, like,
Yeah, very childish.
how are you doing that right now? You're like
Yeah.
45.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of time, most of us still have that child inside of us. We just don't realize that sometimes when we react to things, we're reacting from that wounded childhood spot. I mean, we learn so much when we're kids, and oftentimes we adopt whole belief systems and things and lies about ourselves because we're little kids and we don't understand what reality is or what the truth about something is necessarily. Especially if we have adults who are like super dysfunctional. If like our parents are like, my dad is an alcoholic and like my mom was just super emotional and like I kind of had to take care of her in a way. So
that would make sense why the Al-Anon meetings would become triggering if you had to take care of your mom.
Yeah.
And then you saw other people doing that, you would feel like immediately in that same relationship. I'm sure that'd be difficult.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm being triggered. I don't want to be here. But the ACA program, it helps you to learn how to reparent yourself instead of looking outside of yourself for someone to kind of like take care of you. Because you didn't get that as a kid anyway because your parents maybe weren't there or whatever. So the program, it's just all about learning how to reparent your inner child and to love yourself and to kind of like slowly heal from these like character defects that you take on naturally when you grow up in a dysfunctional home, like people pleasing and fearing authority figures or being afraid to make choices for yourself or speaking up, or like there's this like tendency to hide your true self because you're afraid that someone's going to punish you for being that way. Or like for me, I felt enmeshed by my mom. So I kind of lost my identity in that process and didn't really learn that it was okay to just be myself. It's just like a lot of undoing those kinds of behaviors and untying a lot of knots and making it so you can become your most powerful, holistic version of who you are supposed to be on Earth, basically. I'm like at a place where I'm like, I feel like almost everybody could use this program because no one has like perfect families, Yeah. I think actually a lot of people who have grown up in a normal or a healthy household end up having like realizing that they have to draw boundaries with their parents when they're like in their 40s because they didn't realize like they had some like weird behaviors, I'm like, I drew boundaries with my mom when I was like 21.
Yeah.
Because I had to. In that sense, it's sort of like a gift because I've been undoing a lot of things for a very long time, but now it sort of feels like this is the thing I have needed all along, but maybe I wasn't ready for it until now.
I read a book called The Curse of the Gifted Child, and it talks about how every child's, when they like look back on their childhood, it's always a good childhood. I had a good childhood, and that what it is it's a survival technique. Your brain does its best when you're young to try and repress trauma and try to paint things in a way for you that you can interpret them as positive.
Absolutely. I also think that people are really afraid that they're going to have to blame and shame their parents, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so another part of the program is like you take a blameless inventory. It's basically just like, it's almost scientific in a way. It's like, oh, my mom was like this because her mom was like that.
Yep.
And their mom was like that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's more of an anthropological study in like your own family. And like all these traits have just been passed down. It's called the family disease for a reason, Yeah. You can get this stuff passed down to you even if your parents, no one was an alcoholic. Like maybe your grandpa was. Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's interesting now too that I've been doing it for a while and I feel I'm like in a really healthy place. And now it's like I can see it everywhere. It's like, with some of my best friends, I'm like, oh, you really need this.
Yeah.
But it's not something that you can push on anyone.
Yeah.
It's like they have to do it in their own time, and you can kind of encourage them as much as you can, but
It sounds like it's creating empathy for you and the people you love.
totally.
Yeah.
It's actually made me closer to my family too.
Cool.
So that's cool.
I mean, that's one of the goals.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
That's great.
Cool. Well, we went a little bit over the hour. I'll give you two outs. One, to play another song. You can always play us out. Or two, you can give us a story of the worst gig in your life.
Well, since we were talking about Justine recently, like she and I, I think the last duo show that we did was like 2 or 3 years ago. No, it wasn't the last one. We got one of these private gigs at that there's this fancy retreat center in Ojai. Someone's company was putting on like a company thing, and they hired us to be the music. And of course, most of what we did was like cover songs blended in with like our duo stuff that we do together. And her mic wouldn't work very well. Like we had so much trouble with the sound. And then it felt like, it was hilarious because it felt like we'd never played a gig ever. And we're both like seasoned, and it was like all these weird things went wrong, and we just kept like there was a song, one of my songs that we do together called Here Comes the Light. We somehow like played it like way faster than we were supposed to, and it was and we like looked at each other like like let's just get through this because we can't. And also it was like one of those gigs too where it was like like you're playing like a company party or whatever, and like never in my life have I played anywhere where they were like, oh, you can't have a drink.
Oh.
And they were like, oh no, we're gonna treat you like anyone else here who's hired to be a part of this party. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not like it was like the worst thing in the world, but it was just like it was off-putting because I was really looking forward to like having a nice beverage to drink with my 2-hour set or whatever, you know. But the funny thing that happened, it wasn't that big of a deal. All of that stuff wasn't a big deal, just because I'm like, I'm glad no one's really listening right now. Because her microphone wasn't really working very well for some weird reason. And we're in the middle of playing a song, like singing a song together.
Yeah.
The host of the party just comes up to us and interrupts us in the middle of our song, and is just like, if you guys could like make an announcement that the food's ready, that would be great.
Yeah.
It's like, can you make an announcement that the buffet is ready to go? I'm like, I was livid. Inside, I was like, I know this is a background gig, but you don't fucking interrupt somebody in the middle of a song. Like, what the heck? Yeah. So, so Justine, after that song was over, Justine looks at me and she's just like, I'm gonna let you make the announcement since my mic isn't working. I didn't know what to say because I didn't know the name of the company.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the food was. I was like, what do you expect of me right now? Like, I was hired to sing, not to, like, make announcements.
Yeah.
So I was just like, hey, everybody. The buffet is now open. And I was just like, oh my God. And then we went and we played more, and like we're playing and the line is forming, and it's like forming right in front of us, and people are talking, and it was just like, we just kept looking at each other like, thank God they're paying us really well.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the last worst gigs ever, but I'm sure I have some other ones.
Possibly in the future. Who knows?
Let's hope not.
Well, sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for wanting to hop on the podcast. I mean, obviously we're gonna talk after this, but yeah, I mean, reading about your story, like anybody who starts at 29, I have massive respect for. Anybody who's willing to learn something new and like continue to like really fight and progress. You seem like you have a lot of heart. You mentioned in an interview that music is not for the faint of heart, and you do not seem whatsoever faint of heart. I'm sure sometimes it feels that way, and I also feel that way, but you, as far as like reading off of a paper, you come off as extremely brave. So, yeah, I really appreciate that.
I didn't know that I was getting old when I started. I didn't know I was getting old until like a few years ago.
Everyone's getting old though. That's the thing. And it doesn't, I just don't think it matters. Like, and you've said this in interviews before where you're like, I know that this doesn't matter, and because it doesn't, because you have something to say, you have gifts to give, and they're great. So,
Thank you.
and people are responding to it. So that's the whole point.
Yeah, I honestly don't feel like, I mean, age does not matter. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you love something, it doesn't matter how old you are. But yeah, there are certain self-care things that start coming into play as you do get a little older. And I'm like,
Yeah.
But most people aren't starting things at 29 because of those like self-care things. They're not starting things because they're afraid. That's what it is. And when like nobody's like, "Oh, I'm not going to become a full-time musician because, I can't drink like I could 10 years ago." It's like, that's not the reason. The reason is because you're afraid of looking foolish. And you like to have the guts is way more respectable than people give it credit for. So.
Aw, that's sweet of you. Thanks.
Yeah, many a praise to you.